Good afternoon, and welcome to the meeting of the Disabled Access Advisory, no, I said it wrong already, Disabled Access Appeals and Advisory Board. Today is Wednesday, July 18th. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a full agenda today. We will be starting with a proposed marketplace at the Oaks if Mr. Malik is present. Are you here? Okay, thank you. Then I'd like to invite Haney Malik.
Excuse me, Chair.
Oh,
I need to
I'm
do
sorry,
roll call.
Board. Yeah, look,
Okay, Chair Phoenix.
do over.
Chair
Sorry.
Phoenix.
Here.
Board Member Gillespie. Board Member Carnes-Kelman.
Present.
Board Member Meyer, excuse me. And Board Member Nearing is absent today.
Thank you, Laura. Now, no longer jumping ahead, but going to proposed marketplace at the Oaks. Nadine, no? Brad, you've got to come back. Public comments, anyone? Did my face get any redder? All right. Now? Hey? I did not. Amy Malik, the principal for McKinley Malik Architect, proposed marketplace at the Oaks. Come rescue me.
Here, or,
We'd like you to use the mic.
oh, I'm sorry. Malak Architects, 234 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California. And I'm here to present
It is.
to you the, it's not working?
Well, it's on at this end.
That one? Okay, this one?
That's good.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to give my address again? No?
Are we
Okay.
sure that that one is the mic that is picked up by the TV?
Okay. I was told to provide a set of documents with me that were presented to the city and been entitled through the Planning Commission hearings and reviews and conditioned. So I can put those up right now and we can discuss the plans. Okay.
And each member of the advisory board has also received a copy of this in the mail, so hopefully we'll be able to follow along with you. Anybody know the Jeopardy song? So I want to apologize. I called you Tim, I think, last time because old habits die hard. It was in last month's packet. I was very proud of myself for figuring that out before I came today. Oh, sorry. Thank you. And if you could take the mic with you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for your help,
thank
Mr. McDonald.
Okay. The idea behind the site plan is, as you know, today there's an existing Home Depot site that's been vacant for many years. So the thought is that is to demolish the existing improvements all across the entire property area, with the exception of these two facilities, which is really not a part of our development. It's the housing authority building, and I believe it's dental offices and medical offices right here. So both of those facilities would stay intact. And so we're clearing out the entire site with the mitigation, obviously, for trees and whatever else that we have to keep as part of the entitlement process that we've went through with the city. Let me just, I know that we're talking about disabled access, so let me just preface by the fact of the contours of the development, if you have not been to the site before. The site is really it's below grade on Ventu Park, slightly dipped down. It's about 5 feet to 7-8 feet below the grade on Ventu Park, and it really does not daylight till right here at Hillcrest, at this intersection of Hillcrest, which is primarily the residential zone above us. Then as you come closer to this end of the site, it's about 30 feet or so, anywhere from about 25 to 30 feet higher than Hillcrest. So with that being said, the primary access for our retail development, which really encompasses a Walgreens drugstore right here with a drive-through, and this hotel element right here for about 125-room hotel, plus this market shops area and this additional retail pad in here. We needed to take all of our access primarily off of Ventu Park. And what we're looking at is Ventu Park Road be not just our primary vehicular access, but also our primary pedestrian access point. So that being said, what we wanted to do was really concentrate our development or our access to the development, if you will, from this location. For that purpose, this is, by the way, I should also preface by saying that right here at this location is where the bus stop is going to be. We're building a new bus shelter as part of this development, and it was conditioned to do so. So with that idea in mind, it's now pedestrian, vehicular, and transportation is all coming off of Ventu Park. So with that being said, the idea is that we come off of this intersection. We have a ramping situation that we're going to provide here with rails, and then the site is crossed over to the drugstore, right across here where we have like I said, ramps. We'll have an ADA path of travel demarcated on the plans. We'll have truncated domes, which are required now by Title 24, the state codes. And so you'll come over to the drugstore, and you'll be able to cross access from the drugstore over to the rest of the site via this additional access point right here, which is level. We're going to keep this at 2% maximum slope as you cross over to the site, and you'll be able to cross again through this pedestrian access point that connects you to the markets and the shops, or to continue across all the way to get to this retail pad at this location. In addition, we'll have cross access on the front of Ventu Park by the driveway, and have a secondary means of access to the site via this long sidewalk, and again to this pad. Then the site is really the front development and the back development are connected at two locations. So you can see this is being one of them, and here's a secondary one. So there's 2 points of access that connects all the vehicular and all of the pedestrian circulation from the top part of the site and the bottom part of the site. Then the hotel then is connected through the connecting sidewalks that fronts the shops, the market, across the way, enters in here, and then you circulate around to the front of the hotel. The hotel is an island by itself, and it's really furthest away in the development, and it's really for pedestrian access. We do realize it's quite a hike, but there is really no other way to get to this hotel. As you know, today there's the freeway runs here. We have a ravine down here. We have all kinds of trees and mature planting, and it's a fairly deep ravine that's channeled that's in here. And then over at this location, as part of the mitigation for that the neighbors wanted, and we wanted as well, was to close the secondary access that used to come to the site at this point. So this access point goes away because of we didn't want to disrupt the neighborhood that had to deal with the Home Depot over the many years with truck circulation and cars going up and down and on the street and stuff like that. As part of this development, the idea was to close this access point off. And so when we do that, there's really another connecting point. Not to mention, to try to go up 30 feet of grade, it's quite be quite a challenge for anybody, whether that's via stairs or ramps or what else. So that's really the whole idea behind the way the development is really laid out, and as far as accessibility is laid out. Besides that, obviously the hotel will have elevators inside of it for vertical access, and the ADA stalls are strategically located by every entry point in the center, so We have them ganged up together right here for the marketplace. We have them set up in front of the shops at this location. You can see that they're right here, closest to the entry point over by the hotel. By this set of shops, they're right there by the front, again, by these shop spaces. Over to the Walgreens area, you can see them. They're all ganged up right here at the front by their access point, and they enter right at the chamfered corner of the intersection of their building. So I think we've got strategically located ADA stalls throughout the site. Did I cover everything? I hope I did. So I'd be glad to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. That was a really nice, comprehensive presentation. I got a lot more out of it than just by looking at the map. Board members, any questions?
At the hotel, the handicap parking is out in front, more so for like registration, but not overnight parking when you have a room there. I realize there's no requirement, but is there a possibility, or would there be a need to add some to the rear side of the hotel itself?
The primary lobby area of the hotel is right here at this point, and this is where the elevators access points would be as well. And if I don't know if you folks have the rest of the development drawings and the floor plans, but this is really the location of where the elevators are at, and so we wanted to gang up the ADA stalls as close as possible to the vertical circulation point of access, rather than having stalls throughout the site where you really couldn't access from those stalls, and then having to have people traverse a long distance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Board members, Gloria?
I have a question about the 88 parking places. How many of those are handicapped?
How many stalls throughout the site? Let me do a quick count here. Probably have another sheet, but let me count them real quick. I believe there's 20 stalls.
I think I got 18.
I got 19.
We only got 18 or
There's,
19.
There's 4 in front of the Walgreens,
Mm-hmm.
2 in front of Pad B, so that's
Mhm.
6. I count 6 in front of the market. So what is that? 6 plus 6, that's 12. There's 4 in front of Shops A, so that's 16. Then there's 4 in front of the hotel. That makes 20.
I'm not seeing the 12 in front of the market and the shops. I'm only seeing
There's
8.
There's 6 right here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, okay. Didn't see those. Okay, thank you. So, Gloria, a total of 20. Any follow-up to that? No? Okay. Brad, do you have any questions?
It doesn't have anything to do with disabled access, but I think if I was an able-bodied pedestrian and I was walking and I was coming from the east end, Hillcrest, I think it would be great if you did have a set of stairs that went down the embankment, because if you were walking, it's quite a hike to go all the way around and come back up. But just a thought, nothing to do with this board, but
Yeah, I know. The only thing is, there really is so little residential that's left behind at this point, and then you start getting to the Amgen development. So we're not foreseeing a lot of access coming off of that point, and we're thinking, with the supermarket access right in the front and the shops access right here, people somehow if they came across, they would have to really traverse all the way through in here. So this versus that,
I leave that to your discretion.
Okay, I have a few questions. The new bus shelter that you're building, can you describe it for me?
I would love to, except it's in design. It became a condition at the very end of the project. We weren't really aware of it. At the beginning, we knew that there was going to be a bus stop, and then we were told to make it into a shelter. So the intent is to make it an actual shelter with covering. So we'll have to take that back again to planning, and once we have a real design, but I would imagine it'll be covered, it'll be lit, it'll have a bench, so people can wait for the buses there. I believe there's a bus shelter across the street in front of the Albertson, not the Ralph's Market development, and I think it would be something similar to that shelter, which again is fully covered bench and it's protected.
Okay, I'm not really familiar with the one across the way to know what that's like. I just would suggest that you be mindful of the fact that people in wheelchairs would like to have a spot besides the bench so make sure that you have some covered space that isn't occupied by bench.
Right. There'll be an extra space for a wheelchair occupant.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And then my other question, which Gloria raised a few months ago, is do you have any handicap parking spaces for employees? Or if not, is there any grade issue behind the hotel and the market and the shops that they would have trouble dealing with?
The site is fairly level. Our biggest grades are really on the outside of the site. There is some grade issues that we're mitigating at this location here, where we're going to have a cross-access point between us and this development here, that existing development. Yeah, but however, we're trying to level up the site as much as possible with a couple of drainage points here and some drainage points right back in there. But for the most part, this all will be fairly leveled out, and as obviously getting with a 2% across slopes. So all of this here would be fairly accessible. Yes, we're not providing additional ADA ramps and or I should say ADA marcation, but certainly folks can park in here, walk across this path of travel, and this would be by default 2 additional parking ADA stalls. Everything back in here is fairly level as well, and they can come across, and there's sidewalks all around the buildings.
Great.
Requirement by planning.
Okay, thanks. That's great. Does the board have any more questions? Yes, sir.
I think the layout is very good for that piece of property, and I think you've done well with the distribution of the handicap spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm also pleased with the percentage of spaces to regular. That's really nice. It seems like that was a tough spot to develop, and I'm very impressed with what you've done. Does the staff have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We enjoyed seeing it, and good luck with your project.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have Andrew Althouse, and he's going to be doing a little bit of setup. So, board members, we can either discuss the option of moving ahead to another item on the agenda while Mr. Althouse sets up, or if somebody knows a tap dance or a joke, or does the board enjoy the idea of going ahead to Tom Pisa's report on curb cuts? Let's take a vote. Yes. Raise your hands. Yes. Okay. Tom, could we press you into service one letter of the alphabet early? Okay. Thank you very much. All right. We will now hear an oral staff report by Tom Pisa on the curb cut construction report.
Thank you, Chair Phoenix and board members. My report is in your packet. It was dated June 20th. I would like to point out one item in the report. The project is known as CI 4203, Moorpark Road Sidewalk. This is a really notable project because it's for construction of the sidewalk on Moorpark Road on the east side between Wilbur Road and Gainsborough. And this project, we opened bids on May 22nd, 2007. And we actually had the pre-construction meeting today, and we would expect construction start to begin within a few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And what this does is provide a needed closure of a pedestrian gap between Wilbur Road and Gainsborough on the east side of Moorpark Road, which crosses a traffic road and well used by pedestrians also. So just like to bring that forward. So, with that, any questions?
Well, I agree. That needs a sidewalk there. Good for you. Board members, any questions?
Great. Thank you.
I think we're done. Thank you. Mr. Althouse, is now a good time for you?
Yeah. Just
All
one
right.
more moment to set the boards up, and I'll be right there.
Okay. So we are now going to hear from Andrew Althouse. He is going to speak to us about construction at Lynn Road Medical Associates, and he is the Vice President of Bear Browers Architects. He's setting up some very fancy easels and some really nice looking blueprints that are actually black and white prints. I'm desperately stalling for time.
Thank you. Chairman, members of the board, staff. My name is Andrew Althouse. I'm with Bear Browers Architects, 340 North Westlake Boulevard in Thousand Oaks. I am Vice President and Director of Operations of Bear Browers Architects. I'm here presenting the Los Robles Medical Office Building project to you. This is an infill project to orient you. Here on the site, we have Lynn Road and Jantz Road. Here's the hospital. The existing buildings are 227 Jantz and 2190 Lynn. And our project consists of a brand new medical office building. It's 3-story above and over grade level parking. It's approximately 75,000 square feet. And then the other part of it is a parking structure over here. The floor plate of the parking structure is about 47,000 plus or minus, but it consists of it's a multi-level parking structure. One of the things to point out on this right here is that one of the amenities that we've created here is a pedestrian plaza that links up both all the way from 2190 all the way down to the 227 Jantz property over here. And this is meant to facilitate the people coming from the parking structure as they filter through to the other buildings. Because we're displacing some of the parking that's happening here, that's one of the needs for the parking structure. The parking structure itself is obviously displacing some of the existing parking that's down here, and then obviously the need for the parking as required by code for the new construction. Let's start off with underneath the parking structure, right, or adjacent to the parking structure. We've actually created a series of drop-offs. We've identified that obviously as a need at a medical office facility. So we've got a drop-off that's adjacent here as you come over to the parking structure itself, allowing people to actually drop people off at the medical office building and then circulate back in and park if necessary. Also over at Building A, there are drop-off points here and here, as well as here and here, that allow people to drop off to the buildings. And then also the other one is actually up on Hospital Drive itself, because the way that the project is structured. If you're familiar with the site, this is up quite a bit higher, and there's a grade drop that happens right along this edge right here. And so there's actually an access point to the first level medical office from the grade level right here. So you can actually enter the building on level 2, but it's actually the first level of the office building right there. And of course, we have elevators inside the building itself, though that'll allow you to traverse vertically up and down through the property. We have approximately, let's see, my notes tell me, we have approximately 17 spaces, disabled spaces within the parking structure. They are located on multiple levels. We also have an elevator there that takes you, that accesses the various levels within the parking structure. We have van spaces in the parking structure as well. For Building A and the parking that's being redone over in this area, we have a total of 8 spaces out here. We have 4 over on this side, and we have 4 over on this side, and we have van spaces located there as well. Also on the site, like I said, we have the actual plaza that links up. This is all basically at grade, so level within 2% grades, all done out of scored concrete, colored concrete, things of that nature. Possibly some pavers, but we're investigating that, so we're going to look at what that is. And the amenities of some landscaping and water features and stuff like that as well, just to make it a pleasant experience over in that area. I think I've pretty much covered what we have as far as our site, as far as disabled access, the site itself, drop-offs, and I'd be willing to answer any questions that you may have.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Well, I must say I'm disappointed there's no monorail, but, some other project maybe. Board members, any questions?
Have a
Gloria, then Brad?
I just came from that medical center. I'm there every week, and the parking structure is a nightmare. If you've ever tried to find handicap parking there, it's always full, or there's always vans, loading, unloading, medical vans, disabled vans, and parking there is just a complete nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is going to be the remedy to that? Do you have any solution? What?
Well, I can't speak to the remedy of what is at the hospital, because you must be speaking about the hospital parking structure.
Actually, I'm talking about all the parking there.
Okay.
Len and Jan, because I go to the 227 building
Mm-hmm.
every week. And then also the hospital, so it's all, to me, it's all the same
Right.
situation.
Well, we're trying to address, as I pointed out, with the structure and with our on-grade parking over here, we're trying to facilitate by putting, the disabled obviously at the closest access points that we can to the entry of the buildings, and then as far as the parking structure is concerned, as close as possible to the vertical circulation. We provided ample disabled spaces as required by code, and I can't speak to anything else, like I said, as far as the hospital is concerned and their issues. But I think that as far as what we've done with the existing site and with our project and structure, we've addressed what's been required.
Mr. Gillespie?
Okay, I'm going the same direction Gloria's going. I don't go over there very often, but I do go to the 2100 building on occasion. And I have to tell you, I have never gotten a handicap spot there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm saying is 3% might be the code in general, but I think that there's a higher concentration of disabled parking people at a medical center than probably anywhere else.
Yeah, true.
And I would think that 3% might not be quite adequate for this. And I think if you really want to do a project that's user-friendly, you might want to consider going a bit higher than that.
I think that's something that we should take under consideration then.
Do we have a question at the end?
Again, along the same line, I do frequent building 227, and there are many, many more handicap spots currently at that site. And even though you're allowing some in building B, and of course you're only showing 13 between both parking structures according to the specs, I don't think you're actually giving the entire area the same amount that's existing today. And maybe you could, again, consider, particularly on the 227 and the 2190, to allow more handicap parking.
I will definitely bring that back to our client and discuss that.
So here's my proposal. So
Such a deal.
this is a little crazy, but so just looking at, you have a couple strips here in front of 2190. It looks like there's maybe 6-7 spaces total. And in front of between the 227 and the building A, maybe there's 10 spaces. So you've got like 3 or 4 disabled, and then you've got a few that are regular.
Over in this area
I
right here?
propose making them all disabled. That's my offer.
Yeah.
I will look into that and see what that does to the overall parking numbers and see if we have some spaces to give. And if we do, that might be a consideration then, would be to restripe and maybe provide some additional spaces. But
It's a great idea, and to add a little credence, those that are not handicapped can walk the distance from any parking
Right.
structure, and those that need handicap parking, I would recommend that be considered even so on Building A, or the parking lot between A and 227 Jan's.
yeah, I think that over in this area as well.
Yeah, you
then.
have 4
Yeah.
right now.
Correct.
Brad?
Thank you.
I think the other thing is, and certainly I don't think this board can address it. I would love it if anyone here has any advice on how to do it. But, it's impossible to tell, but it appears that there's a great deal of abuse of these spaces within the community. So I don't know if there's a mechanism by which we could try to increase the vigilance. I think I once had a police officer ask me once, and I produced my documentation, but there's a lot of people who are parking in these spots and running out of their cars pretty quickly, and maybe they have some disability that I'm not aware of, but I see it an awful lot, and I don't know if this board is a place to handle it, but if anyone has any suggestions, I'd love to hear it.
I don't have any suggestions, but my personal experience has been similar. I pretty much lived at the hospital in the month of May, and I saw a lot of abuse as well. And Thousand Oaks is not a real big town, and so we're talking people I know, people I have seen who don't have disabilities using those spots, so not just guessing. But I would add to the proposal that you consider making all of those spaces disabled access, because not only are you going to be having a lot of customers, clients, patients, etc., who already have disabilities. You're going to have a lot of people with temporary disabilities. There's a lot of outpatient surgery goes on there, and you're not allowed to walk to your car after you've had outpatient surgery. They take you down in a wheelchair, and so I really think that idea has a lot of credence, even if
I think that's why
we have to trade away from building B spots. Or sorry, yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why we also, added as many drop-off zones as we could, recognizing the fact that these are medical offices. There will be a lot of drop-offs, pickups in wheelchairs, people like that. So.
Then I do have one suggestion. Again, not that I know if our board can have any sway over the hospital, but if every physician or every office were, when they gave a patient expecting to have outpatient surgery, in the instructions for showing up that day, if they asked the people driving the patient to use the drop-offs and to not park in the handicap spots unless their patient is actually going to be in the car when they park. I think that if people are encouraged to use the drop-off spaces and to leave the disabled spaces for people who are going to be coming and going from their car, that could help the situation a little bit. Brad, did you want to add to this? Okay, well, I have one more thing to say. Sorry, and then you can.
This may be off the subject, and I apologize, but maybe we can have a public service announcement over Thousand Oaks
The
Television.
white zone is for
Saying,
looking.
please be courteous of your handicapped citizen.
Well,
Off the walls.
preaching to the choir, though, usually. The people who should hear that aren't going to. But again, speaking directly to the hospital instead of you, the architect, but I did notice the valet parking attendants at the hospital in the existing parking structure seemed pretty oblivious to who was parking there and who wasn't, and I would guess it's not part of their job, but if the hospital administration could ask them to occasionally monitor the use of the existing spaces, we might. People were parking there because there were no consequences against parking there, I think. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Does anybody else on the board have any more questions?
I will revisit this at the board comment section. We'll let this young man leave. He's done plenty.
Yeah, you're sweating bullets, aren't you? I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine.
Well, great. How about staff? Does staff have something they'd like to share? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Huh? Well, you thought you got away.
Are you going to come back and present to us again? Maybe with more parking places.
If that is something that the board desires, I can, consider that.
I think we can request it, and staff can look into it, because I do know that we are revisiting some past projects today, and I know we've also requested in the past that architects come back and show us what changes they've made in response to us,
Comments.
just to make us feel better. So,
Very well.
So yeah, I'd like to request to staff that. In fact, I'd like to request, if possible, that this be a standing procedure, even if it's if the architect doesn't necessarily come back, but a staff member just makes a little follow-up report or something. Any comment, staff? Is that something, Mr. Powers? We didn't introduce you. This is Dave Powers sitting in for Dave Huners today, and I'm going to put him on the hot seat and ask if that's something that the staff can look into.
Well, I don't know if I can give you a concrete answer now, but it's something that we can take into consideration, and Mr. Yuners can probably report back to staff at the next meeting.
That would be great. Thank you, Andrew. We really appreciated your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to letter D, which in every alphabet does in fact follow B. We have Roy Myers giving us an unmet transit needs report.
heard here tonight, this afternoon. One of the things that you asked is about enforcement of disabled or handicapped parking spaces. The Sheriff's Department has a cadet program that goes around to all the shopping centers, hospital, different facilities that have handicapped spaces, and they do enforce those. I have seen them enforced myself. I witnessed a person who blatantly pulled into a spot and ran out, and he had arrived just shortly after they left and promptly issued a ticket.
Yeah.
So, but it's like anything else, they can't be everywhere, but you might, as a group, you can always ask the Sheriff's Department to give a report on the enforcement and how it's gone.
That was my plan to bring that up in the comments, but I guess I don't have to now.
Bring it up again so it can be official.
Yeah. I'm just giving you information because I worked with it in the traffic division for so long. Another thing that was brought up was the bus shelter that's being proposed. The bus shelter, we have a set standard for our bus shelters, and they follow federal guidelines for ADA accessibility. It's set up for one wheelchair person, passenger. It is a shelter you've probably seen along the boulevard and other places here. The other green ones are out there. They have 3-foot wide side panels. They have a 5-foot canopy. The reason we do that is so we, even on some smaller sidewalks, we can stay in compliance with ADA access. If we get a 5-foot, we'd be eating up a lot of the sidewalk space. So that complies with it. Just give you some updates. Just to show you what's happening with ridership on our bus system. We experienced another major increase. We increased over 9% ridership this last year. Going back 2 years, comparing the ridership 2 years ago to the ridership now, we're at approximately 30% increase.
Wow.
So
that's great.
Things are happening out there. And a large increase has been seen in the disabled access. Both the dial-a-ride paratransit system and the fixed route, we're seeing increases in mobility of people who are wheelchair passengers. So we're seeing a number of things. We're tracking a lot of those items. And then you actually get what you actually asked me to be here for. The unmet needs hearing. The unmet needs hearings were closed. They were heard by the Ventura County Transportation Commission. We did have 4 comments that came in regarding Thousand Oaks itself. Of those 4 comments, there was one dealing with requesting a stop at the the adult school, Neo Valley Adult School over off of Old Farm Road. Asking if the bus stop could be placed there. Part of our problem, it's a residential area, plus there are speed humps on Moncliff. It's a little difficult for our buses to get into that location. About a block and a half, 2 blocks away, we do have a bus stop on Flores, and it is used quite frequently. There was also a request for later service on the dial-a-ride, and also later service for paratransit. They were asking that the paratransit system operate between 6 and 8 p.m. to connect with the Metro bus system and also the Vista. As it currently is required, we operate our paratransit system during the same hours as our fix. That's required by law. And our bus system runs till 7 o'clock, so our paratransit currently runs to 7 o'clock. So the findings were that it was not an unmet need. There was a request, and that was the 4th one, was for Saturday service. We are taking that in consideration, even though it's not an unmet need, because of the ridership comparisons would not require it as an unmet transit need, but we are looking at that possibility. We'll be reporting to City Council at our update hearing on all transportation, whether it be traffic, even some things that Tom Pisa gets into, the roads, and transportation being transit and dial-a-ride. So if you have any questions, let's see if I can answer those.
I have one question just pertinent to what you just said. You say that the Saturday ridership indicates that that is not an unmet need for people with disabilities to have access to the paratransit on Saturdays. Can you explain why?
Paratransit is we already provide transportation on Saturdays for dial-a-ride and paratransit. Just the fixed route system we don't provide. We're the only one in Ventura County other than SCAT that provides 7-day-a-week dial-a-ride and paratransit service. CME only provides 6 days a week. Camarillo 5. They've gone to a half day on Saturday. Moorpark's only 5. So when we did the study, we just recently finished that paratransit study, and it found that there was only 2 operators that operates 7 days a week. Now, that's like I said, that's SCAT. Let me step back on it. SCAT no longer exists.
Gold Coast Transit.
Gold Coast Transit.
Good. What can you do with that?
But they operate 7 days a week. We operate 7 days a week. There is a recommendation in that findings that all systems provide Sunday service, but VCTC can't enforce that. They can only make it as a recommendation and a goal. So whether the other cities decide to log on to that and actually put that into place, we'll have to wait and see how things turn out as the hearings go on at different cities. Ginger Girardi will also be coming to our city when we do the overall transportation presentation to the council.
Well, I can speak to Camarillo. They definitely do not have paratransit on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying they all do. You're saying none of them do?
None of them do.
Okay.
The only 2 is SCAT and Thousand Oaks.
Because this is the only city where people with disabilities ever want to do something on Sunday, apparently? Okay, well, we won't fix the world. We're happy with Thousand Oaks.
Right.
The other thing, and this is what I had emailed Dave Huners and asked him if you could report on. So because it's not, I don't know if it's agendized accordingly or not, but I wanted to know if the results were in on the study that was commissioned by VCTC to look at the entire county and see if there were any paratransit gaps in service.
That was the paratransit study I was referring to.
Oh, okay, that was
done
it.
Countywide.
Okay.
And one of the things they found was there's no Saturday. There's limited Saturday service, and there's only 2 agencies that provide Sunday service.
Okay.
So in their recommendation, they felt that everybody should be providing Sunday service because of the ability for people to access churches and other facilities like that, or to do shopping on Sunday.
Just to have a life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that the larger areas, Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, and SCAD, all provide Saturday service. So they didn't look at that as being a critical, but the fact that there's only 2 out of the whole county that provides Sunday service, they felt that was a little more of a gap.
I would agree with that. I mean, I can share an anecdote that this past Sunday, the Ed Hunt Rehab Point picnic for people with disabilities was held at the beach in Oxnard, and there is no fixed route service there, and there is no way for people to take paratransit from, for example, Camarillo. So we had a number of people with disabilities who weren't able to attend that picnic because of lack of access on a Sunday. So I'm glad they're looking at that.
Right.
Board, do you have any questions for Mr. Myers?
Maybe they should plan a picnic on a Saturday.
That makes too much sense. All right, I can talk to them about that. That is a good idea. I'm not sure they even knew that this gap existed until the organization where I work was trying to make reservations by SCAT to get these people to the picnic, and Camarillo said, can't do it. Thank you for that common sense suggestion. Any questions for Roy from the board? No. Any questions or comments from staff? We're done with you. Thank you very much. And last on the agenda, we have an oral staff report by Glenn McDonald. He is going to revisit past projects for us.
Thank you, Chair Phoenix, board members. I understand at the last meeting there was a request to try to get some input on what has taken place on past projects. Since I was not here at the last meeting, I understand my supervisor immediately volunteered me to do that work. So
that's how it works.
I have to make a better effort to be here at every meeting, I guess. Anyway, I went back 4 years, and I'm going to give you some information here. It may be helpful, and it may just raise more questions for you, but that'll be fine. I went back 4 years for the projects that have been presented to the board. We looked at 17 different projects. I went back to June of '03. And 17 different projects. There are some of those projects we looked at more than once. The Oaks Mall we looked at more than once. The continuing life community up by Cal Lutheran we looked at more than once. So we looked at 17 different projects. Of those 17, 10 of them have not started construction yet. Of those 17, 6 of them are currently under construction, the Oaks Mall being one of them. Continuing life community. There's the Windy Drive, the executive office area along the freeway at Windy Drive. And then there's 3 other smaller projects that are under construction now. Of the 17 we looked at, there's really only one that is completed, and that's the Lakes, the shopping center and mall area next to Civic Arts Plaza. Some of the things that happen, it's pretty hard to determine who makes a suggestion and how that is carried out. As an example, when a project is presented to the board, after that, then it is normally presented to the Planning Commission. As a matter of fact, one of the projects you looked at today will be before the Planning Commission next week. Then, after the Planning Commission may make some recommendations, at some point, the project is presented to Building and Safety. And Building and Safety, or Building Division, this is part of the California Building Code that the Building Division looks at to make sure that that building or that project complies with the state requirements. So my point to all that is, when you make a suggestion and then other people make suggestions, other committees make suggestions, it's pretty hard to determine 3 or 4 years later when construction is ongoing as to where that suggestion came from. As another point would be that I know that you meant well a while ago, Brad, when you suggested that if somebody were jogging down the road and they wanted to come into that hotel complex, I immediately thought, no way. Because if there's a stairway there, the California Building Code requires that there be an accessible path of travel. So there's a lot of things that the building code will cover that perhaps would never have been brought up before. On the Lakes, the shopping center, I do recall that when that was before the board, one of the suggestions was that the disabled parking spaces be spread out more. At the time it was presented to the board, and actually there's only one member of the board who may have been here at that time to hear that, but all the disabled spaces were more compact, and it was one of the suggestions that we spread those out. And if you go over and look at the complex now, they are indeed spread out more. They range from down near the Claim Jumper all the way up to behind CPK. Now, even if the board had not made that suggestion, it may still very well have turned out that way from input from other committees or the California Building Code. Now, so at any rate, the other thing that I just wanted to point out, that when a project comes back a second or third time, each time a committee makes suggestions or puts on some requirements, the development is progressing along. As an example, this project that will go before the Planning Committee next week, it's getting more and more finalized each time. So when it comes back to you again, while you may have an interest in seeing what it's like, the ability to make changes diminishes as time goes on. And that was all I have to the input that I have. If you have any questions or if you have additional input for me, be happy to try to find additional information that.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate knowing more of the process. I think that's good for us to know, even if it doesn't have any impact on what we do or say here. It's nice to know at least where it goes from here. Brad, did you have some comments?
No, I guess just in summary, it sounds like we are advisory, and we can ask them to cooperate, but it seems like such a drawn out process. It's very hard to put much teeth behind it, other than to. I guess we need to put some sort of guilt on these builders to do the right thing.
Well, and I think that you are doing that. I think that the suggestions made for the two broad projects today are very appropriate, and I think that they do have some bearing. Like I said, I know the one project that has been completed on the lakes, the suggestion that came from the board was done. Again, I don't know that I can't say that it was done just because of the board, but I know that what the board had suggested was indeed the way that the project was constructed.
Do you have a question?
I somewhat feel like Brad. I happen to have in front of me the plans to the Canal Gateway, which we looked at several months back. And I recall at that time we had suggested the same thing, spreading out the parking spots, handicap spots. And I remember asking the gentleman making the presentation if he could return. Of course, I was a little bit naive at the time. Return and show us what he's done. I, too, feel that, granted, we're advisory, and that's all we are. No one has to listen to us in the bottom line. And I guess to put credence in maybe some of the things we do and the time we spend here, it would be nice to see if there was a revelation to our comments. But it sounds like what you're saying is basically it's a one-shot thing. Make your comments today at this meeting and hope for the best is really what it sounds like. Am I correct?
I don't know that I would say you're correct or incorrect. My only point is that there is a long process that developments go through. And while a comment may be made here, there's several other steps that he's going to be going through. And this is kind of the beginning of it. So I don't think I would look at it that, and I suppose maybe you're accurate in that it's advisory, but by the same token, I think those comments are well listened to, and if at all possible, are incorporated into the.
Yeah, we just don't see it coming back. The next time we would see it would be to walk to the site once the construction's done, in essence, and of course it's lost any impact at that point in time. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I assume that we just have to make a statement and hope that maybe they, through due diligence, do something, correct something, add parking spots, whatever's required.
Well, also remember that, like I said, of the 17 projects that have been heard in the last 4 years, 10 of them have not even started construction yet. So it is a lengthy process.
Can we have a comment from Gloria and then Brad?
I just wanted to comment on the lakes. I remember when the lakes presentation was made, and we had asked that there not be shrubbery put all the way around the disabled parking spaces because it made it more difficult. And we had suggested that they were spread out and put more evenly, and they were extremely receptive to that. And if you go to the lakes now, you find that they don't have shrubbery where you're trying to get your wheelchair, and that it's a very pleasant place to go and visit and eat. I know I go there quite a bit because of that, because the suggestions were followed. Parking places are easy.
Yeah, to reiterate, it's in the merchant's best interest to listen to what we advise.
Because handicapped people shop too.
They have money, yes, it's true.
That's very much connected into what I was saying, is that, when we meet here, we meet with the developer, the architect, and I think it could perhaps have greater impact if we were able to communicate our thoughts to the people who own these properties, the ones who will. I mean, if they were to know that, look, there is a group of people who are disabled and they are interested in how you do this, and perhaps they could put more, if they realized how important it was, perhaps they would put more pressure on the system in order to make it more accessible for us. So I don't know if there's some way, I don't expect we're going to get the tenants in here at the meeting, but if there's some way we could communicate message from our meeting to them, perhaps that might have some use.
That segues a little bit into my question, which is procedural. When a project goes on from us to the Planning Commission, do our recommendations travel along with it in writing? And does the Planning Commission see the changes that we said we'd like to see?
I'm not aware that there's a formalized message that's given to the Planning Commission. And perhaps either Mr. Powers or Mr. Heher probably have more information on this than I do. I'm not sure how that works, in all honesty.
Anybody else?
I will say that I know there is, I don't think there's a formal policy, but I think there is an attempt at least to communicate what transpires here, the recommendations here, to the people who are checking the plan on behalf of the city to make sure they understand what the requests have been here, or the suggestions have been here. I think that has been done in the past. But as far as a formalized communication where they actually get the report and they check off on it, I don't think that's been done yet.
I know for me, I would appreciate if some kind of formalized paperwork could be developed. I think anyone on any advisory board would feel better knowing that not only the person appearing before us has heard our advice, our recommendations and suggestions, but that the people further on in the process have as well, including city council. I mean, otherwise, in a way, we're just kind of paying lip service.
May I also add that the case planner on, as an example, using the project today, the medical buildings, the case planner was here at the meeting and listening what was being said, and that will be the planner who presents it next week to the Planning Commission. So I think there is a fair amount of expectation of listening to what the board here has to say, and that probably is presented. I don't know, again, I'm not sure it's a formalized method, but I think that your comments and questions and concerns certainly are of value.
I don't doubt that. I just know for me, my desk is piled up this high, and just the paperwork we get to come to this advisory board meeting that's bi-monthly is, okay, not staggering, but there's a little of it. But I'm sure City Council and Planning Commission deals with staggering amounts of information, and if there could just be some kind of punch list on the top of each thing that says it's been to this, and they signed off, or they liked it except for this one thing, or whatever. I just think it would probably make everybody's job easier and make everybody feel they'd been heard, and make the community feel that there was more buy-in from everybody, and that more people were heard and their ideas were included. Is there any way to, I don't know, is there a way for this advisory board to propose that such a thing happen?
Let me follow up on that. I don't know whether we have a process and whether the board has that authority. I don't know. But why don't let me follow up and get additional information on that.
Okay, and there may well be a reason why it can't be done that I don't know about, but you know. Okay. Can I make a request then that officially that staff look into this and see what can be done, or what should, if it's possible, and can it be agendized for the next meeting?
Consider it done.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments on our past projects conversation? Greg?
It's along the same line. When this meeting is convened, I know it's filmed. Is there a written record of what has transpired at in these particular meetings, or is it just basically audio and visual on the film.
I'm not aware of a written record.
Okay, so no one really takes minutes. I've noticed that. Yeah.
Minutes are posted, but I'm not aware of a written record of it.
Okay, so someone transcribes what took place into a written format.
That's correct.
Okay.
Does that include our actual questions or just a presentation was made, the board asked questions?
Similar to the agenda.
Yeah, it's more of a summary of what has taken place and probably not the actual questions.
Okay, then again, I think that reinforces even more our general contention that it would be a positive addition to the process to have some kind of punch list that travels along with each project. Okay, thank you very much. I believe now is the time when we ask for board comments, and we'll start with Mr. Gillespie because I know he has one.
Yes, I just wanted to know whether, back to this whole idea of enforcement, I don't know if enforcement's the right word, but I wondered if it'd be possible to have a representative from the Sheriff's Department come to a meeting and just kind of go over the process for what they do and any suggestions they may have for us as we deal with abuse of disabled parking places.
That's a reasonable suggestion. Let me see what I can do on that.
Gloria?
Yeah, I still have the concern about the number of building and planning projects that go through the city of Thousand Oaks that do not come to this board. And it seems to me we're the city that's best progressive, and the amount of developments that are going on, that we really should be more involved in it. And I think maybe that our meetings should be monthly instead of bi-monthly.
I know I'd be willing to do that. Would the rest of the board be willing to meet monthly if we were given the opportunity to look over more projects?
Gloria, could you repeat the question? Yeah, would you please?
Yeah, she said that she still has some concerns because there are a number of projects that go through the planning process and are approved without us being given the opportunity to make recommendations on them, and that she'd be willing to meet monthly if it means we could look over more of these projects in advance and have a positive impact on them. And I know for me, it seems to me that it's in the city's best interest because it's way cheaper to, make changes up front to just a plan on paper than to have a bunch of people complain afterward and have to tear up concrete.
Before I answer that question, maybe Dave or our attorney could answer the question. Is there what is the protocol for this committee? I mean, is it to review those that are available for review, or is there a percentage? I realize it's a requirement to a degree or we wouldn't be here. But how can some projects not be addressed by this board and others are addressed? I don't understand that.
I will find a document that was prepared a few years ago, and as I recall, I think
he got it during orientation. That was changed. It's the charter you're talking about, right? The charter for how this board was even formed in the first place?
Well, but in addition to that, didn't we get a copy to you, Sherry, about a month or two ago? It was a document that was prepared about 5 years or so ago by the board, and they kind of stipulated what projects they wanted to look at.
I remember we had the question, but do you remember? I don't remember seeing it. I thought it was going to be gotten to us.
I had brought up the question before because my concern is I don't want to be a token board. I want to be an active board. And I very much want to be involved in my city, Thousand Oaks. And to me, a 2-month span of not being involved is too much. It's more tokenism than adversary. And I feel we really need to be more adversary.
And whether it's faulty memory or I just didn't get it, if you could give it to all of us again or for the first time, we'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, we can do that. Now remember that also that any project of any size does come to the board. So I think the decision is going to be Do you want to see a 7-Eleven store? And I don't even know that the city has a 7-Eleven. I'm using that as an example. But there's there is a kind of a cutoff at which what projects do you want to see? And obviously, the larger the project, the more impact it has on accessibility. As an example, if it's one small store, then they're not going to have the path of travel that goes from building to building, which we require. The path of travel, from the street perhaps because of the size of it or the difference in elevation. So we are somewhat limited in the number of projects that are of a size that is of interest.
Would it be possible for us to create a subcommittee of 2, maybe 3 people that reviewed every project, and anything that the subcommittee felt was fine as is, we could pass on, but anything that we felt could stand for some improvement, dramatic enough to take up 5 people's time and staff, we could see in an official meeting?
Well, I'm going to say I'm not sure what you're asking.
Sorry. Could we form a subcommittee to preview them?
I think the question is, do you want to request staff to first look at what the factors are that they have as far as the projects that we would be reviewing, this board would be reviewing, and then based upon that, then you can make a recommendation that you should possibly form a subcommittee to review something.
That seems to be the appropriate order, so yes. What he said.
Also going to your question about the ordinance itself that establishes this board, it doesn't actually indicate in the ordinance itself the percentage of cases that this board will be reviewing. It just has a purpose behind this board, right? And I think, and you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the history of this is actually a while back there was an issue with contractors really not paying attention to ADA rules and the need for disabled access, and that has slowly changed. So one of the purposes behind the board before was to actually hear appeals about someone who is fighting putting in a certain amount of disabled access stalls, for example, and I think that has changed over the years, that contractors have actually accepted this as a rule, and so we don't have that function as much anymore, where we are actually listening to appeals from some contractor who's been required by the city to put in a certain amount, and they're saying, I want to fight that, and that kind of appeal would come to us.
Well, in light of that, I'd like to just say that even though we have the ADA, I know a lot of people who fought hard to get the ADA in the first place are concerned that if everyone sits back and coasts now and is complacent and feels like everything's good, we're okay, we'll start losing the rights that were so hard fought for and hard won. So I really appreciate that this board is given the opportunity by the city to continue making sure that the rights of people with disabilities are heard and considered.
How come my light won't go on?
You're done, apparently.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, Glenn, because it does give me some background as to the purpose. I had a general idea, and I did feel that maybe there wasn't much credence in what we were saying, and we both know that that could leave this room after these meetings and go nowhere. But so be it. At least we've had the opportunity to voice our opinion. The background that we've just received actually even helps me more in understanding the purpose here. To talk about reviewing everything, I don't think it's necessary that we review every project, such as the 7-Eleven. How you determine what we do and don't, the city has its way of doing it, I'm sure. Possibly that you could use a square footage, or you could use a number of parking lots, some kind of standard that would, above that certain number, be presented to the board, this board, and anything under that, of course, not require our approval. These meetings, take up time. There's meeting room, there's expenses, and so on. So I don't necessarily think we need to see everything, but maybe a standard could be raised as to what would automatically go before us. And I thank you for your input.
Why don't I get a copy of the articles that I was mentioning earlier that a board had decided a few years ago of the type of projects they wanted to look at and use that as a starting point.
That would be great. I would even go so far as to recommend that most organizations have bylaws reviewed every 3 years, something like that. I think any standing advisory board could stand to review its standards and such every 2 or 3 years. Because especially with turnover, you've got new people. I wasn't here. Maybe Brad and Gloria were here, but Greg and I weren't here when those standards were formed X years ago. It's all about making more work for you, isn't it?
I'm going to be here. I'm going to be working no matter what.
It's job security.
You're here anyway. To answer your one question, though, I would not mind meeting once a month. And the timing, this time of the month is good for me.
Okay. Well, then, may I request of staff that that issue be agendized as well as part of this whole thing when we meet again on September 26th, that we consider, is there a need for monthly meetings? Thank you. Are there any other board comments? No? Okay, I think we've done enough damage for the day. It was a good meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. And before we adjourn to our next meeting, which will be September 26th, I would like to remind the public that we have a lot of empty chairs here. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you come down. You can fill out a little green card and talk to us if you want, or just show your interest. I'm sure that would send a message to the city as well. And, it's all about full inclusion and being driven by the residents who live here. So we'd like to hear from you as well. I'd also like to close this meeting in honor of my mother, Joyce Phoenix Rewald, a 33-year resident of Westlake Village and Thousand Oaks, who died on June 6th, 2007. Thank you all, and we'll see you September 26th.